Dear Neil, I have just got my first job as a composer for a film. However, I am as nervous as I am excited about it and could use some good advice. So my first question for you would be, how does a film composer work with a director? Sincerely, Confused Composer in Coventry.
How does a film composer work with a director? Now, make no mistake, the job of film composer is and must be a collaborative one. Film composers don't get to work on their own. It's not their film. And the guy whose film it is has been working on it probably for months, even before the composer was hired. So, how do you make that work? It's one of the toughest things. It's probably the central point of any film composer's job, is finessing how to work with the director. The director has specific ideas for the film. The composer has specific gifts as a composer. The director has chosen the composer, probably because he's heard stuff of his he liked before, or she, I should say. Or if, there's a specific requirement in the film that needs someone who's got special gifts, working with big band, or working with electronics, or working with sound design, or whatever. But anyway, this relationship has been chosen by the director. So the director and the composer sit down together and talk, and they talk through the film in general. Now, they may have done that even before the director shot anything. Certainly in the case of Hans Zimmer, who tells a wonderful story about how his job, as far as he is concerned, is to sit down and talk with the director about the film. The director then goes off and makes the film. When he comes back, he's a beaten man. And what Hans has to do is not only provide him with the music he needs, but remind him of how fired up with enthusiasm they were about this film before the director went off and made it and came back heavily scarred from the experience. So, first of all, ideas. When the composer is given ideas to work from, he or she then goes back and starts coming up with those ideas. Now, in some cases, they run through loads of different things. They try stuff out. They might play here on the keyboard. They might be thinking at a different level altogether. They may be already working on how a string quartet could work, or how a full orchestra, or how a trumpet player might work. But then comes the time when they've actually got to try it up against the film. And even more difficult than that comes the time they've got to play it to the director for the first time. Now, when the director and the composer work together, the director knows exactly when he's hearing the music that he's going to want. And he's also going to know immediately when he's hearing music he doesn't want. And the composer also should know when he's beginning to get a film, as Hans Zimmer says, under his hands. That sense of having a movie beginning to work in your head with music that you're coming up with. Now, time frames always different. Some composers don't even get hired until 10 days before the film's got to be locked off, maybe because another composer's been fired off it. Other composers, like Carter Burwell, like being in right at the very beginning of the whole process of putting a film together. He may be on set for the whole of the shoot. He may be around for months coming up with music, and that's the way he likes it. He'd rather be absolutely inside a movie, scoring it and coming up with what they need. And it's horses for courses. There's other composers who'd hate that. They only want to be in the white heat of creativity for a few weeks. And usually it is only a few weeks. The plain fact of the matter is that the music is often the last taxi off the cab rank. It's the last thoughts that have gone into post-production. And sometimes a composer is working with pretty much a locked off print. Some composers refuse to work on a film until it is locked off, which really reduces the amount of time they've got. Other composers would probably be happy to work with a film that's still in a bit of a fluid state, but they've always got to be ready for that call that comes through. You know that perfect cue you came up with? Well, I'm afraid that's gone. Can you rework it? Or worse still, it's gone because that whole bit of the film's gone. Or worse still, your music was great, but we could only use an eighth of it because we've changed the cut completely. Or worse still, you're fired. So many people that have done the job and are famous for doing the job got fired at some stage in their career because they couldn't quite get it right. And I think it's a big question as to whether that's because of attitude in dealing with the director, or, as in many cases, an utterly impossible director who had maybe changed their mind on what the film was about while the music was being written. Or maybe they did just get it wrong. Maybe a composer doesn't always know best what music's going to work. And that's why it has to be collaborative. That's why ultimately the final say, the final arbiter, always will be the director. And it's down to the composer to come up with what's needed. And in that way, you get great scores. In some instances, even between directors and composers who hate each other, you get great scores. It doesn't matter. All that matters ultimately is that the connection's been made and the composer has felt that film under their hands. And we'll be talking about a lot of the films where the composer and the director didn't get on at all.